Hello, 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 and welcome to another installment in the book review series that I'm doing where I read various gay romance novels and I give you my thoughts on them. Today we're going to be touching on The Tin Star by J.L. Langley. We're going to be doing more than just touching. This is a book that I've wanted since I was probably in high school, and I'm finally glad I was able to A, buy it, and B, read it. I want to say I became aware of it when I started buying books from like Goodreads, not Goodreads, thrift books. Sorry, thrift books is what I meant to say. Because I would just search like romance there and just see what books were cheap. But back then, when I barely had any money, $15 for a book was quite expensive. Whereas now I'm like, oh, 15's nothing. It's the $30, $40 books that I'm having problems with procuring. But as we go through all these books, there's going to be some major spoilers ahead. I'm going to be spoiling the characters. I'm going to be spoiling the plot for the majority of it. The majority of like the main beats, if you will, are going to be ignored. But there's going to be some like character groupings, some character discussions, some plot discussions and notes that I've made that are going to be spoilers. So if you are someone who wants to read the book and doesn't want to have anything spoiled, I will definitely recommend the book here. I know I'm spoiling the rankings, spoilers for spoilers, but I will definitely recommend this book. I cannot recommend it enough. If you like small town romances, if you like falling for your brother's best friend romances, the kind of, small ensemble cast, if you will, and more focus on the relationship and the, I would say, inner workings of a small town rancher style life that also has to deal with, two openly gay characters now. It's a well-written book, and I really look forward to reading more from J.L. Langley as I find more of their books. I believe there's another one in this like kind of universe that they've built around this, couple in the city that they're working in, or the small town, I should say, that they're working in. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading more from them. But moving into the characters, we have James Killian and Ethan Whitehall. Ethan is, I would say, the main protagonist that we are following, essentially. He is the brother's best friend. So the brother being John, who's not featured on the slide, is the brother to James Killian. So Ethan is, selfless. He finds out that James is kicked out for being gay, and he opens his house and gives him a job, and really just sticks his neck out for hiring him. He has his own soft spot for James, which leads them up to getting into something deep, and a relationship starts to form. And he's working out a deal kind of throughout the story to open a steakhouse, as he is a cattle rancher, and part of this like conflict comes from the fact that the owner of the ranch that James Killian worked at, the father who kicked him out, pulls out of the deal. So it's now like not up in the air, but there's a lot of drama involved with that. It's not the main focus of the book by any means, but it's definitely something you can kind of follow a through line, if you will, and I did enjoy that. James, on the other hand, is the kid who gets kicked out for being gay, and I believe he was the foreman of the ranch that he was working on, his daddy's ranch. So he's hardworking. He knows what being a ranch hand's like. He knows the work involved. But he doesn't want to cause Ethan any trouble for being associated with this new ranch, the Tin Star Ranch. And that's the kind of crux of his issue within the book, other than, being kicked out for being gay. Because he's also had a long-time crush on Ethan growing up. He looked up to him. He was really, kind of growing up, realizing that he's gay, realizing that he's attracted to Ethan, and then unfortunately realizing that he probably couldn't do anything about it because he assumed Ethan was straight. So it's that kind of, falling for your brother's best friend trope, kind of, and I eat that shit up like breakfast. I'm a big fan of that. But they do quickly fall into a relationship, and it's a sweet relationship. I like them together. I think they work well. I think they're well written as a couple and have their own ups and downs and inner turmoils. And so the side characters, there are plenty, but there are some more notable names I wanted to call out. So we have the good ones, the a-holes in town, and the questionable people. So the good ones are like Julia Killian, Melissa Hatcher, Aunt Margaret, Hayden and Ed, Bill. And for the most part, it's pretty easy to figure out where people are. Julia is James's older sister. Melissa is the owner of the like feed and supply store in town, one of the feed and supply stores. Aunt Margaret, Ethan's aunt. Hayden and Ed, the Tin Star ranch hands. Bill, the foreman at the Tin Star. We'll go to the questionable. John Killian, Jamie's older brother, and then Ethan's friend. He has like not growing up to do, but he has more to redeem himself in my eyes. He's very like when he first finds out, his response is to go to Ethan to just get plastered. Like, I don't understand why you wouldn't go after your brother at that point. I understand the stress. Everyone handles stress differently, but when the response is, my brother just got kicked out, let's go fucking get wasted, you know? That's where I lose, like, the respect that I had for him. I almost put him in the good ones, because, like, he does, you know, help his brother by getting him his horse, be a little bit strangely, the dog, some stuff. So it's like, I understand where he's coming from, but he could do a little bit more, in my opinion, especially with a best friend in Ethan, you know? Like, I feel like he should be a little bit more involved and a little bit more ready to defend his brother, you know, even if it loses him his job. Like, well, is a job more important than family? I don't think so. And then we have the a-holes in town. Jacob Killian, the father, who kicks out Jamie. Jeff and Carl, former ranch hands at the Tin Star. And Tom Cook, manager at Hatcher's Feed, but on thin fucking ice. And so as far as the story goes, you know, Jamie gets kicked out of his house, loses his job, and is left penniless after coming out to his father. Ethan catches wind from a drunk John and goes to bring Jamie to the Tin Star Ranch. You know, that first night, Jamie nearly gets shot when the other ranch hands find out, because it's a small town, rumors go flying, that he is gay. And, you know, they bring him out and almost, you know, like I said, fire at him. And those two, the ones I mentioned before, get fired. They are off the premises. They no longer have a job here. And then Jamie, as they go throughout the story, goes to town with Ethan. They find, you know, Tom at the feed and tackle. I keep saying feed and tackle in my mind. Feed and supply store for like ranches and stuff. And, you know, they aren't too well pleased with how Tom's behaving. They leave. They cancel the order. Melissa kind of steps in, you know, shoos Tom away and says, if this ever happens again, you'll deal with me from here on out. You know, Tom is Tom, and, you know, all this and other stuff. I think the town could do better, but again, it's a small town. My ideals and my perfect wishes are never going to match up to what fiction has, and obviously or even what reality has. So I understand that there's going to be some times where, like, you just can't fire somebody because they are this way in a small town where there's only like 20 people maybe, you know? But he does also have some issues at the bar, and he also has some issues at the gas station. You know, Ethan isn't surprised to learn that Jamie's father is backing out of the steakhouse deal because of this whole debacle of Ethan hiring Jamie after, you know, Jamie's father, Jacob, kicked him out. So eventually it comes to a head when the Tin Star Ranch starts getting terrorized, ending up with Ethan getting shot one night. He does make it, and he does rely on Jamie and Julia to get through it, as after being shot and nearly dying, you kind of can't do a lot after that, you know, so it's understandable that he's relying more on Jamie and Julia to kind of help get things through. They do have a happily ever after. There is a happily ever after at this book, and I do appreciate that. It's not the bury your gays trope, which is what I was fearing when I read Small Town Ranch, you know, coming out gay, stuff like that. And then when I got to the shooting scene, I'm like, oh, here we go. But no, there is a happily ever after. But there's a lot more drama beyond that in regards to the house and the family and kind of stuff like that. There's also a lot more side character development that I haven't gone into, so there's a lot more you can kind of get from the story if you know are listening to this at this point and figured you are interested enough to read it. There's a lot more to kind of uncover, and I'm touching like big swings and arcs, not necessarily all the nuances in the character development that they do. So let's go through some of the tropes that I found quite interesting in this one. So I found, you know, obviously the friends to lovers, they're somewhat distant friends, Jamie and Ethan. They know of each other. They're not like complete strangers, but they're not like best friends, as Ethan was much closer to John, Jamie's older brother. So it's that falling for my brother's best friend trope, which again, I eat up like breakfast. And, you know, the best friend's brother, you know, Jamie has been thirsting after Ethan for years, his brother's literal best friend. And there's a lot of discussion on like what that might do and what that might lead to in terms of conflict between Jamie and John, and Ethan and John for that matter, because of this newfound relationship. And it's set in a small town. Like I eat up small town romances. As much as I love like big city stuff, big cities just feel so impersonal to me when written, because it's not enough to like for me to understand like the city as a character or the town as a character. But this time I can get like, okay, well, not like given a map, I can figure out, okay, there's, you know, it's a small town. There's a, you know, a supply store for ranchers. There's a bar. There's obviously a gas station. You know, it's a small town. It feels like the town I'm currently living in. So I appreciate that aspect of it. And it's refreshing to see some justice with bigots, you know, like the fact that Ethan gets shot doesn't go unannounced or undiscussed throughout the rest of the book after that point. There's comeuppance for people being bigots and doing bad shit. People go to jail for this shit. And it's refreshing to see that in a book where sometimes it's just like, hey, bad shit happens. And the enemy, if you will, or the antagonist somewhat gets off scot-free. In some of the other books I've read, Berserker comes to mind, where the X is kind of just, it's less physical assault, but more like emotional, trying to break up a relationship. And like nothing really bad happens other than the fact that like Ron Berserker's ex is just basically like ignored. And I wish there was more. And it's not bigot per se, but it's just more like, I want conniving little shits to like get their comeuppance, and that's what I really enjoyed about this one, is that there's weight and gravity to some of the actions that are happening with regards to like the steakhouse and Jacob pulling out and, Ethan getting shot. There's like weights and consequences, both good and bad. As you got shot, you can't do stuff. And I like that there's, a sense of justice from the sheriff who's like, yeah, no, this is a thing. And we're going to look into this. And it's not like just going to be slid into like the cold cases. I really appreciate that. So if you couldn't tell, I really like this book as we move into the rankings. So we'll go through the rankings with the plot, the characters, the writing style, the spicy scenes, and then my overall ranking, if you will. So again, the plot is a 4.5 stars. There's not much I would change here. I would say, a couple of things, not major stuff, but I would just like more, kind of stuff between like the big events, if that makes sense. Slice of life is always good for me, and this is a very slice of life book in a way where it's like a brief like slice of their life from when Jamie gets kicked out to their happily ever after. And I like that. I just like it when it's more fleshed out. Not saying this book is bad and it doesn't do that enough. They do. Like I said, there's consequences, there's, gravity, certain actions, and I appreciate that the story, for what it does, follows that. It follows through on what these characters do, their character lives, their interactions, their the fact that people know each other. That makes it feel more real to me, and I really appreciate that. And even going into the characters, it's a full 5 stars for me. Like, I love Jamie and Ethan. I love the characters. I love the brother and sister, Julia and John. Fucking hate the father, Jacob. He's an asshole. I hate the asshole ranch hands who nearly killed Jamie. Like, it's a lot of, good and bad. Like, I don't want to just read a story where there's only good characters, per se. But this whole cast, I felt like I knew kind of who they were, even if I didn't understand, like, the roles that they played, because I'm not a rancher, Like, I can understand, like, okay, I know what a foreman does in my job, so I can equate that to what a foreman would do at a ranch, and vice versa. I can kind of equate, like, okay, what does that mean for this, and, what does that do here? But I liked that, I got a sense of who Julia was, I got a sense of who John was, I got a sense of who the side characters were, the relationships, the personal plays, and just kind of their interactions felt real. So, as far as the writing style goes, it's a solid 4 stars. There wasn't anything I really felt too off about this. I don't know if I'll ever give a 5-star writing style. And I don't know if that's just me, but I have read fan fiction. Not saying that this is worse than fan fiction. Don't get me wrong here. But I've read fan fiction that have gripped me on every word, and I've read fan fiction that have skipped the more scene descriptions and just gotten to the dialogue because it felt too repetitive at some points. But this was more where I've read every single word, and I would say, like, I'm not comparing everything to fan fiction because I know fan fiction is a whole different beast, but I will say that the writing style for me, there are some good ones and some bad ones. We haven't touched on the bad ones yet, and I keep saying that. It's the Psychopath Daddy and Convict Daddy. We'll get there. I'll probably get there in a couple of weeks here. Probably by like summer, I'll get there because I just read Convict Daddy and I'm writing the review for it now. And I'll reread Psychopath Daddy, which I will cover at some point. I know I recommend them here in an upcoming video for like a darker theme because I had nothing else to really kind of go off of. And I did actually kind of enjoy Convict Daddy in a weird kind of way. And I reread Psychopath Daddy and it wasn't that bad. Anyway, I'm off topic. But for the writing style, I would say it's a solid 4. Nothing bad. It doesn't knock it out of the park in my opinion. But again, I am me, and I just have read basically all the fan fiction that I care to read. So anyway, the sexy scenes, that's where I get a little bit less involved with. I'm not saying that there's too few or too many, and that's kind of a hard thing to gauge. I just wasn't really like that enthralled by them. And again, I'm also a gay man who watched too much porn. So like for me, it's just I've read and watched more that I think have been better. Not saying, again, this is bad. I will definitely recommend this book. I highly recommend this book. But as far as what I could suggest and what I would offer, it's not the most enthralling spicy scenes. But that doesn't mean it's a bad book. just means it's not for my taste, as one will be. So as far as overall rankings, I'm giving this a full 4 out of 5 stars. I cannot recommend this enough. I love the Tin Star. It's been a book that I've been wanting to read since high school. Literally, it's probably since I could first look up, what romance books were on like Kindle or like Amazon and Barnes and Noble. I would literally just be trolling through the romance sections and hoping to find something gay, but I would alas never find them in the physical stores. But I will say, solid book. If you like romance about cowboys, if you like, drama in your romances, the Tin Star can't go wrong for you. Now, what to recommend after that? After this kind of glowing review, if you will, what do I recommend? So this one, I have 2. So small town romances specifically are like my jam. I love them, and I personally don't like jam, so that's a big statement coming from me. But as far as another small town romance, I would say Love Means No Shame by Andrew Gray. I also read that the same time I was reading The Tin Star on my vacation back in March, which means it's been 2 months now. So yeah. But I will say that book is similar in themes, not necessarily exactly in themes, but it's similar if you like small town romances and like drama and family drama. I'm a big sucker for family drama as well. And speaking of family, the other one I would say is if you're looking for more family dynamic, like gay romance, I know the movie Make the Yuletide Gay exists, but I much prefer the novel. I mean, I love the movie, don't get me wrong, but the novel, I think for me, just works better. I like books. I like reading. If I could watch it as a movie, that's one thing. If I could read it in a book, I'd prefer it in a book. But Make the Yuletide Gay, the novel by Rob Williams, and there's also, I think, a sequel to that, Make the Yuletide Gayer, I believe. Maybe by Rob Williams, I'm assuming. It's a phenomenal read. It's short. I will definitely admit that. It's a short novel. But as for what it is, it's a definite yes for me. I enjoy it. In fact, it's actually sitting right to my right. And I quite enjoy this. It's holiday themed, so it's about Christmas, and it's nice. I like this, and it also includes a new short story with this as well in the novel, so you get more than you get with the movie. That's my recommendation there. But if you enjoy these videos, I have a new thing I think I didn't add to this one, but I might have in the future. It's an end card, essentially. I have a Patreon, which you can support me on if you want. I have a full-time job. I'll be completely transparent. I don't need the money. I do this because I love these books, and I love talking about these books, and I really, really enjoy the way I can discuss and get to talk to you guys about the books that I'm reading, because otherwise I will just read them and they'll just sit on my shelf, collecting dust and being covered in dust. But I really, really enjoy them. I really, really enjoy making these videos as well. I like the time I take in putting into just making these Google Slides, and I like how I get to keep them. Like, I can just look back at these and see, how many videos did I do in a year, or what books did I talk about? And I expect end of year stats at some point when I get to maybe January of next year, because I really want to go through that. Not sure how I'd categorize books that are like a lot of different themes or like categories, but I would love just to talk about the books I've talked about, maybe show the sheets that I make with regards to the rankings and go from there. But if you don't know, I'm also on Twitter. You can follow me at Shirada Sky. I changed it instead of Sky Shirada because I want it to be similar everywhere. I'm also on Twitch at Shirada Sky. I stream 7 nights a week. So if you guys haven't been following me on any of these social media platforms, feel free to do so. Or if you don't use them, that's also fine. I will continue to make these videos here. And I appreciate you guys. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead. I know it's technically Sunday probably by the time this goes up. So I hope you guys have a wonderful week. I'll see you guys next week for another gay book. And I hope you guys have a wonderful time. Stay safe out there.